So today we are going to review writing and saying numbers, but this time we're going to model them so that you guys can see what they look like, okay? So we are going to make sure that we are practicing all the things we know. We're clapping on the decimal, we're saying the house's name before we leave. The only house we don't say that on is the ones, tens, hundreds house. So we make sure that we're doing all of that stuff. Nothing has changed, all right? All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is the first place after the decimal. And the first place after the decimal is the tenths place, because the first place before the decimal is the ones place. So we are going to write tenths. You are going to write this on your top flap that has this underneath it, okay? And the number that we are going to be working with is this number right there. I want you to pause the video and say this number out loud. You should have said 8,000. We have to say the house's name because it's in the 1,000s place. So we say 8,275 and 6 tenths. Some of us were confused last 2 weeks. We clap, clap, and say and. We don't clap, clap in the place of and. Okay, so we and. So it should say 8,275 and 6 tenths. What that means is, what this means, this is the biggest part of it, is that we took one whole, just one, not 5, not 100, not 10, not a million, just one. So we had one, and we took that one and we split it into 10 pieces. So these look different than our ones, tens, hundreds, because those look three-dimensional because we're adding on. These are flat because we're taking one and we're splitting that one up. So if we have 6 tenths, what would that look like? It would look like us taking a whole and splitting it up how many times? 10, because we're in numbers in base 10, and every time we move to and from place value, it's worth 10. So it would mean us taking a whole and splitting it up 10 times, and that's what we did. Now we're going to color in to show that we're representing how many? 6. And the reason why this is different from our tens rods is because we can have a bunch of tens rods. We can't really have more than 10 here. And the 10 rods are separate because they're taking ones and adding them up. We're taking a whole and splitting it up. So even though we don't use all of the 10 pieces of our whole, they're still there. Okay? That's why we say tenths. We don't say 6, because we're not going to split our whole into 6 pieces. We're going to split it into 10 pieces, and that's going to represent 6 of our 10 pieces. So we're going to color in 10 bars. So what we did was we colored in 6 out of 10 pieces, 6 tenths. We took our one whole and we split it into 10 pieces, and then we only wanted 6 of them. Okay? So how we would write this is exactly how we would say it. So when we write numbers, it's exactly how we read it, if we are reading it correctly. We read this as 8,275 and 6 tenths, because that's what we have, because that's the place it ends in. Remember, everything after the decimal, wherever our last digit is, that's what we name it. Okay? So it's in the tenths place, we're going to say tenths. We're going to write it exactly how we said it. And wherever there's a comma, it goes in our number as well. Wherever there's a decimal, there can only be one, we say and. This is going to say 8,000, because we're saying the name before we jump the comma fence, comma, 200. 75, clap, clap, and 6 tenths. So remember, this is going on the inside of your flap. We have 8,275 and 6 tenths, because that's what we had. We took our one whole, we dropped it into 10 pieces, and we only wanted 6 of them. Okay? Now we're going to move on to our hundredths. This is going to go on the top of the flap. Hundredths. We're going to use the same number, but we're just going to keep adding more behind the decimal. What does this number say? We should have said 8,275 and 63 hundredths, because now it's in the hundredths place. So we have to say the place that it lands. 2 places after the decimal is the hundredths place, and this is the reason why. We took our tens and then we split each one of those tens into 10 pieces. Now we have 100 pieces in our whole, in our one whole. We don't have 100 extra pieces. We have one piece that we split into 100 pieces. That's what that means. The reason why we can't say tenths here is because we can't have 63 tenths. That makes 6 wholes and 3 tenths. We have to say hundredths, because 63 fits into 100. 63 does not fit into 10. We couldn't model 63 hundredths on here. Okay, so we are going to color in 63 hundredths. Do I need to count 63 times? No, I don't. I know that each bar is worth how much? 10. Numbers in base 10. So I don't have to count. I don't have to count up to 60. If I know that each bar is worth 10, how many bars do I need? I need 6. So I'm going to color in 6, and then I'm going to color in 3 little boxes. Okay? I'm going to color in 6 whole bars and 3 little boxes. So we've colored in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bars, which have 10, and 10 times 6 is 60, and then 1, 2, 3. We've colored in 63 hundredths. That's what that means. Okay? So just like we did up here, how we write it is how we say it. We make sure that if there's a comma, we put a comma in it. We make sure that where there's a decimal, there can only be one. We say and. So we are going to say, it's very similar to what we did up here, 8,000, comma, 200, 75, clap, clap, and 63 hundredths. 8,000, say the name, comma, 275 and 63 hundredths. Okay? So that's why we say it the way we say it. We took a whole, we bust it into 10. We take those 10, we bust them into 100. Now we're going to take those 100 pieces, and each one of these pieces, we're going to split into 10 pieces. They are super tiny on yours. Super, super tiny. So you want to make sure that you're paying attention. That's what it means though. We took one whole and we split it up. We didn't take a bunch of ones and put them together. No, we took one whole and we broke it into 10 pieces. Then we took those 10 pieces and we split them into 100 pieces. Now we're about to take those 100 pieces and split each one of them into 10 more pieces, making it 1,000. So we're going to move on to the thousandths. The thousandths. Remember, this is going on the outside of your flap. All of this stuff goes on the inside of your flap. The number we are going to use. Looks a little different. Go ahead and say it. You should have said 8,275 and 634 thousandths, because now we are in the thousandths place. Okay? So it just, we're not changing the 6 in the tenths place or the 3 in the hundredths place. What we're doing is we're breaking up our whole and then we're adding more pieces to it. So we should say 8,275 and 634 thousandths. And you say this as if this part didn't exist. How would you read this? 634. But because it's behind the decimal, we have to recognize where it ends, which is in the thousandths place. So how many pieces am I going to color on here? I'm going to color 634. Am I going to count 634 times? Absolutely not. What I know is that each column has how many pieces in it? It has 100 pieces in it, because I had 10, and then I put 10 pieces in each one of these. Well, what is 10 times 10? 100. So that means that each one of these columns has 100 in it. So I need to count up how many? 6. Then we're going to do that first. So we're going to count up 6. You're going to count up six columns, because that's going to be 600, and then we're going to come back and see what the 3 and the 4 do. All right, so we colored in 6 columns. That equals 600. Now we need to do 30. Well, just like we did up here. Do you see how all of these have 6 columns colored in? That's because all of that equals 6 tenths. Okay? Now we need to think, how many boxes do we need to color in for the 3? Well, it represents 34. Each one of these boxes is worth how much? 10. So we're going to color in 3, because 3 times 10 is 30. So we're going to color in 3. Boxes. And it matches up here, because if I didn't have this, that's what this would be. But now I need 4. So I'm going to color in 4 tiny little guys. Just like that. Now I have 634 out of 1,000 pieces. And that's what this decimal represents. That's what this decimal represents. That's what this decimal represents. But do you notice how, because we had 6, we still have 6? Watch this. It still equals 6 bars, 60. Now let's say I put my 0 for my thousandths. I still have 6 bars, which is 60. So that's why when you put a 0 at the end of a decimal, it doesn't change it. All it means is that we're breaking it into more pieces. Our one whole into more piece, more piece, more pieces. Okay? So how do we say this again? 8,000, jump the fence, 275 and 634 thousandths, because this is in the thousandths place. We say it exactly how we write it. So we have 8,000 comma, 275, and we always have the hyphen when we're holding hands with our little one. Remember, the only time we don't is when we're teenagers. We're not there yet, but we're close. So the only time we don't hold on to the ones place is when we're teenagers, in our teens. So we have 8,275 and just say that number. $634. What? Thousands. So this is how we say these numbers and what it means. When we are breaking up our one whole, we're not adding pieces. We didn't add more pieces. All we did was split it up into more pieces. We took it from 10 pieces to 100 pieces to 1,000 pieces. Each time splitting up however many pieces we had, 10 times. Each one of these, 10 times. Okay? So this is what it means, and this is how we say it. I'm going to